So my talk is a little bit different. I'm actually going to talk about a voice agent today, and specifically how we design the personality for this voice agent that we launched in 5 different languages. This is a partnership between Intel and Oakley. And so what did we do? So this is a photo of the product that we launched. It was a pair of glasses that you could talk to. It had embedded microphone into it, and you had detachable earbuds. And the whole point was that it came with a companion mobile application that you could talk to. It could talk to you, and it would coach you through running and cycling. And it was a mixed initiative system. It would initiate the conversations, but you could also initiate it via trigger phrase. And the idea was that we wanted to make it as natural as possible. So I have a little video I can show.
Okay, Radar, what's my workout plan for today?
We're going for 20 miles, climbing 1,800 feet. I can tell this is too easy for you, so let's push a little harder.
How's my power?
Your power is 320 watts.
Stop.
Stopping workout.
Okay, Radar, what's today's run?
We're going for 7 miles, climbing 900 feet, and we'll do 2 medium hills. Nice job balancing your effort on this hill. Keep it up.
Okay, Radar, how's my pace?
Your current pace is 7 minutes and 32 seconds per mile, which is just right.
Stop workout. Thanks, Coach.
Okay, so that's a little bit about the system that we developed, and now I want to talk a little bit about why personality is important and what we did to actually implement the personality that we have. So generally speaking, with conversational agents, regardless of whether you design your personality or not, people will actually attribute the personality traits to it. They'll anthropomorphize it. And that comes complete with social expectations and social norms of the target country that you're actually launching in. So what that means is that people that, when they interact with these systems, if a system interrupts you, it's considered rude. If a system mispronounces something or gives you a stupid answer, it's considered stupid. And if a system doesn't remember and doesn't maintain context, then it's forgetful. So I want to take a quick look at what some of the commonly available voice assistants on the market right now, things like Alexa and Google Voice Assistant, because some of these did a really good job on their personalities and have some really interesting insights available that they've publicly shared. Cortana is actually probably the best. I would say that if you have time and are interested, the blog post and the interview with Susan Hendricks, that was the principal program manager, actually did a really phenomenal job of discussing personality and conversation. And for their agent, Microsoft actually conducted interviews with executive assistants and celebrity personal assistants to come up with the personality for Cortana. So she's competent, caring, confident, loyal, all the things that you want out of a personal assistant, or at least what Microsoft's research shows that people want. And when talking about other cultures, again, they had to do this research in multiple places because it was launched in multiple languages. So there's some differences. For Cortana, it took upwards of 11 months to select the specific voice based on local feedback. So what's interesting is they found things like Spaniards express a preference for husky female voices, English speakers preferred a more chipper voice, Chinese users wanted a voice that sounded as if it was smiling, which is an interesting thing to say. Alexa is a little bit different, but has some similar traits. It's smart, approachable, it's supposed to be humble, friendly, helpful. And the way that Amazon approached it is they actually they launched their voice, and then based on customer feedback, that's how they refined it. And Alexa actually doesn't support that much right now. This was when I last looked. So they actually support multiple dialects of English, which is actually important. The target, not just the language, but the locale that you're actually launching in matters significantly. And then they support German and Japanese. Google Voice actually started out without a personality, and one of the things that I found really interesting was this quote. One starting point was recognizing that having no personality was actually a personality in itself. This goes back to what I mentioned. People will attribute a personality to your agent no matter what, so you might as well design it. Siri's information is a little bit more sparse, but Siri is often seen as the sassy one. And so responses like this: are you better than Alexa? Well, I'm older. So I've had more practice telling corny jokes, right? These are the kinds of things that kind of bring out the personality in Siri. And one of the interesting things I found about Siri is because Siri, you can choose to have a male or female voice. The output when you ask Siri about her gender is that she's genderless, like a cacti and certain species of fish, which is unique and actually can be kind of disconcerting. So the way that we thought about it, we broke it down into 4 components of a personality, and I'm going to go through all those in a little bit of detail now. So we thought about, we've developed conversational systems like this full voice one. We also have ones with avatars, so we always think about embodiment, right? Does the voice assistant actually have a body that it can refer to or not? That's kind of part of the personality. Register, whether it's formal, informal, you talk to your teacher differently than you might talk to your boss, differently than you talk to your parents or your friends at a bar. And so that's also important. This depends on who you're talking to as well as the context that you're in potentially. Gender, is it male or female? A lot of Cliff Nass's research actually shows that people do not like genderless agents or agents that don't have clear gender markers. So this is also a problem if, for example, your voice sounds female, but the construction of your output sounds male in that target country or locale. And then we thought about traits like, is it cheery or supportive, and kind of like the way that other companies also describe their agents. So this is a quick overview of the different languages. We launched in English, French, Spanish, German, and Italian. And for each one of these, we, in this particular case, did not have an avatar associated with it. So the only thing that we worried about in terms of embodiment was not referring to an actual physical body. So nothing about eye color, hair color, that sort of thing. Register, gender, and traits, we actually spent a lot of time on. And so I'm going to talk about those a little bit in detail. I'm going to go back and forth in the presentation on this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about things that are common for every culture. One of the things that we used as a guiding principle were Grice's maxims, the cooperative principles of speech. And so when we were designing our output and our personality, we wanted to make sure that we were truthful, that we provided the right amount of information, not too little, not too much. And in terms of truthfulness, this actually does encompass sarcasm. People do sometimes specifically flout these maxims to derive a desired effect, right? So this is like, in literature, people actually become more eloquent or use longer outputs to have a particular effect on users, or will use sarcasm, right? The problem with sarcasm in conversational agents is that while the TTS might be able to produce it, the ASR can't detect it. And anything that that a system says to a user, the user should be able to say back, and that includes tone. So that's one of the reasons where you don't see a lot of TTS output playing around with intonation as much. We wanted to be relevant and we wanted to be clear, and these are all important. So going back to register a little bit, this was actually common across all of our languages. And the reason for that was actually that we wanted, and we chose a casual conversational tone for this. So we were thinking about, like bar talk, or what we have here is stereotypical surfer, or somebody that's super formal, you might be talking to your boss or like a CTO or something like that. And the reason that we chose casual conversation was specifically because we want it to be representative of how a real coach would talk to a trainee, and to make it easier for the user to actually connect with the agent. Kind of like a running buddy or a cycling buddy. In terms of differences, there were a lot of differences that we looked at. We used the Hofstede Cultural Dimensions, which are freely available online. You can take a look at different countries, and there's 6 of them that we looked at. Power distance is referring to the social norms and hierarchy of a particular country. Masculinity, how sort of whether they have macho tendencies or masculine tendencies, whether a country prizes masculine, what we consider masculine traits, and whether these should be masculine traits is a completely different discussion. Long-term orientation, so this one is about connecting the past with the future. Do you have ingrained traditions, or are you more likely to view change as a founding part of your culture? Individualism versus collectivism, uncertainty, avoidance, basically how likely are you to take risks, and then indulgence. Do people in that culture actually value fun and the freedom to pursue whatever is you like doing? So these helped us in informing the way that we chose both the gender and the traits actually for the particular culture. So for gender, cultural expectations, social norms do influence user expectations, and we are looking in the moment, right? So whether these expectations change over time is a different story, but for now, American expectations, male voices are considered more informative, and this again, a large part of this is from Cliff Nass's work with BMW and with other companies. And they're considered credible in male domains. Female voices are generally more likable, cross-culturally actually, considered more friendly, more involved, and more credible in female domains. And when looking specifically at coaching, there's not a lot of female coaches out there across the board, unfortunately. So we also conducted gender research specifically in every country. So we had a survey go out to participants in Spain, Italy, Germany, France. And we also looked at athletic clubs and the coaches that are employed there. Spain was conducted first, and it was conducted a little bit differently, so that's why I have it split out. And for Spanish, we did, because we have a fairly large Spanish-speaking population in the United States, we also conducted local research with native Spanish speakers, as well as conducted research in Spain itself. So you'll see it split between US collection data efforts and then the target country. By and large, what we found is that French highly skewed male, Germans and Italians a little bit less, but still had male coaches and preferred male coaches. So that's why we chose, in French, German, and Italian, that's why we chose those. For Spanish, we actually found that there was a lot of, it was kind of equal, and for other reasons, going back to the Hofstede principles, we decided to actually go ahead with a female voice in Spanish. More of a teacher type, I guess, authoritative teacher. So the last one, the traits, we actually did a lot of work on this. And the big ones were, do we want kind of like a drill sergeant, a gruff coach, authoritative coach, or do we want a supportive coach? And by and large, we conducted studies and surveys in these countries, and we ended up in nearly French, German, and Italian all wanted supportive and cooperative coaches. Spain really wanted authoritative coaches. So going through the design process a little bit, we actually spent a lot of time with Oakley on this. We wanted to understand their customer and their brand to guide these principles. And so we actually brainstormed a lot of these personality traits in English originally with them. So we started with English and then moved on to the other languages. For each one of these, we actually wrote a coach bio, and part of the reason for this is we had custom TTS voices for each locale to help with our personality and our branding. And these biographies informed both the output construction as well as the TTS voices themselves. We wrote copy guidelines and then the copy itself, and then we iterated based on user feedback. We actually did a lot of focus groups. So what did personality brainstorming look like? That's what it looked like. We basically, through everything we could, we came up with a long list. I think in the end, there were about 30 traits that we came up with that we distilled down into a core couple of traits that we wanted to go for. And we also looked at where could the personality actually come out. Like I said, this was a mixed initiative system, so there were user-initiated questions, and then there were system kind of commentaries as it observed you while you were running and cycling. And in large part, the user questions were things like, what's my heart rate? And those are very matter of fact, so personality wasn't going to come out much in those. So where we really focused our energies was the output commentary, you're starting your warm-up, or a good job on this hill, or you're not doing so well right now. And so that's what you see here, is that entire design process of going through and trying to identify where we can actually bring that out. Just a little bit more on the brainstorming. So we ended up actually going through and identifying the different parts of the workout and things like that as well. Just an example of one of the bios that we wrote. In all of the languages, we actually had to come up with a dialect that was going to work for the entire country because we couldn't manage dialects. Italian was quite difficult because Italian does not have a dialect that's shared between North and South especially. And so we had to use standard Italian, which is only used by newscasters. It's a little bit weird, but it's what it is. And then as part of our localization process, we went through and we basically had people rate within the target languages on experience, credibility, sincerity, personability, and efficiency, and expressiveness of firm and energized. And again, this was based on that distilled list. So really quick, we did 2-week take-home studies, 1 hour setup with sessions with each participant, and we surveyed participants and then brought them in for focus groups. What we found was that in English, despite our best attempts at being supportive, some people thought that they were being chided, especially in the workout compliance section. French, participants wanted the agent to switch from formal to informal register during the course of their 2 weeks. And then, by and large, we found a higher barrier to entry for voice systems in Europe. So, that's it. Any questions?
Hey. Okay. So, really great talk. I'm Martin Porchon at the University of Nottingham. I have many comments for offline, but I was wondering if you could talk a bit about why you chose to gender the bot in the first place, because I think everyone knows there's many cultural biases, but it seems like you chose to accept those and embrace those in your work. And I was just wondering what the motivation for that was, as opposed to just giving it more robotic, genderless voice.
People want to attribute a gender to the bot, whether you give it one or not, and it becomes very disconcerting, kind of uncanny valley-like, if you don't gender it. And so we really tried to maintain a consistent gender throughout based on what the social expectations were. That's really the reason why. It is a product. We're looking at selling these. We're not trying to change, in this particular case, we're not trying to change social norms.
Okay, honest answer. Okay, thank you.
Steve Whitaker, University of California at Santa Cruz. So you used the term personality. So I was just wondering, there are more kind of classical definitions of personality, such as Big Five, where you could derive some of the same behaviors there. So I'm just wondering why you didn't go with that route necessarily. Because it's a more formal approach, right?
Yeah, it is a more formal approach. We were thinking about it in the context too of embodiment, like I said, was very important for us, which isn't part of personality normally. Because our team does design both avatar-based conversational agents as well as bodiless agents, right? And so that actually does affect the output in a lot of ways, and that's not really grounded in sort of the Big Five. So we could have used a combination, I feel like, but we kind of...
I think we should talk out there. I think there is some work which is looking at, for example, gestures and Big Five. So I think there's and there's studies of avatars as well, which are trying to bridge that gap. So maybe
Great.
we could,
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.